Admiral Lexkar stood on the bridge of his massive warship and watched the stars ahead. His 6 eyes focused on the scanner displays that showed thousands of ships spread across space like a deadly cloud. The largest war fleet in galactic history floated at the edge of human territory, waiting for his command. The Admiral's purple skin rippled with satisfaction. After 300 years of watching the humans spread across the galaxy like some kind of disease, the Galactic Council had finally decided to act. The young species had grown too bold, too fast. They had taken star systems that belonged to older, wiser races. "Status report," Dexkar ordered, his voice echoing through the command center. Commander Vexley, a tall being with crystal-like skin, stepped forward. "All fleets are in position, Admiral. 12 species, 10,437. Ships. The humans have nowhere to run." Dexkar nodded his massive head. The fleet was beautiful in its power. Ships from the Dominion floated next to vessels from the Hegemony, the Star Kingdom, and 9 other major powers. Each ship bristled with weapons that could crack planets. Together, they could turn entire solar systems into dust. The humans had nothing like this. Their biggest ships were barely the size of Council patrol boats. Their weapons were primitive. Their shields were weak. The Council's intelligence reports made it clear that humanity's entire military could not stand against even one of the 12 fleets, let alone all of them combined. "Open a channel to the human fleet," Dexkar commanded. The main screen flickered to life, showing a human woman in a simple gray uniform. She had short brown hair and calm blue eyes that seemed too peaceful for someone facing certain death. The nameplate on her uniform read Admiral S. Chun. "I am Admiral Dexkar of the Galactic Council Defense Force," he announced, trying to put as much threat into his voice as possible. "You are Admiral Chun of the human fleet, I assume?" That's correct," the human replied. Her voice was steady, almost friendly. She didn't look afraid at all. This confused Dexkar. Most species would be begging for mercy by now. "Admiral Chun, I bring you the final decision of the Galactic Council. Humanity has expanded beyond its proper place in the galaxy. You have taken systems that were meant for races far older and wiser than yours. This ends today." The human admiral simply nodded, as if he was telling her about the weather. "I see. What does the Council want us to do?" Dexkar was surprised by her calm response, but he continued with the prepared speech. "The terms are simple and final. All human colonies must withdraw to your homeworld and 3 nearby systems. Your species will accept Council oversight of all future activities. Your military will be reduced to local defense forces only. You have 72 hours to begin compliance." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. On the bridges of the other Council ships, hundreds of alien commanders waited to see how the humans would react. Some expected desperate bargaining. Others thought the humans might try to fight. A few predicted immediate surrender. Admiral Chun was quiet for a long moment, her eyes looking past the camera as if she was listening to someone else. Finally, she looked back at the screen with the same calm expression. "What happens if we refuse?" she asked, Dexkar's forearms spread wide in a gesture of absolute finality. "Then we will remove you from those systems ourselves. Your colonies will be destroyed, your ships will be turned to scrap. Your people will learn what happens when a young race challenges the natural order of the galaxy." Behind Admiral Chun, other human officers moved quietly at their stations. None of them looked panicked or afraid. They worked with the same steady efficiency that had made humans so annoying to deal with in trade negotiations and diplomatic meetings. "I understand," Admiral Chun said after another pause. "The Council wants us to leave 847 star systems and return to Earth and 3 nearby systems within 72 hours. Correct. And you will accept Council oversight of all future human activities beyond your designated space. I see." The human admiral was quiet again, and Dexkar could see her eyes moving as if she was reading something off-screen. "Admiral? Dexkar, may I ask a question?" The request was so polite and normal that it caught the alien commander off guard. "What is it? Will the Council be satisfied if we complete the withdrawal in less time?" We're thinking about a week instead of 72 hours. Would that be acceptable? Vexkar blinked all 6 eyes in confusion. The human was asking if she could surrender faster than required. This was not how these conversations usually went. Most species would be trying to negotiate for more time, not less. You want to withdraw faster? He asked. If that's acceptable to the council, yes. A week gives us time to do the job properly. We don't want to leave any mess behind. The admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were just as confused as he was. Commander Vexley stepped closer and whispered, "Sir, this could be a trick. No species gives up this easily." But Admiral Chun continued before Vexkar could respond. Actually, let me be more specific. We can have all human civilians, equipment, and installations removed from the contested systems within 6 standard days. Will that timeline work for the Council? Vexkar felt his confidence beginning to crack. He had prepared for human threats, human begging, human attempts to negotiate. He had not prepared for polite scheduling discussions. You're saying, you will comply with all Council demands? He asked, wanting to be absolutely sure he understood. Yes, Admiral, we'll be gone within the week. All 847 systems will be completely evacuated. Every human citizen, every piece of equipment, every structure we built will be removed. The systems will be exactly as they were before we arrived. The silence on the Council flagship's bridge was complete. After a moment, Vexkar found his voice again. And you accept Council oversight of your future activities? Admiral Chun smiled slightly. Admiral, once we withdraw to our designated systems, I don't think the Council will need to worry about human activities affecting galactic affairs. We'll be far too busy with local projects to concern ourselves with expansion for quite some time. Commander Vexley made a small sound of disbelief. Around the bridge, other officers exchanged glances. This was not how conquest was supposed to work. Very well, Vexkar said, trying to regain his commanding tone. You have 6 days to complete the withdrawal. Any human presence remaining in contested space after that time will be destroyed without warning. Understood perfectly, Admiral. We'll begin immediately. Is there anything else the Council needs from us? The question hung in the air. Vexkar realized he had no idea what to say next. In 300 years of military service, he had never had an enemy ask if there was anything else they could do to help with their own defeat. No, he said finally. That is all. Excellent. Thank you for your patience, Admiral Vexkar. We'll be in touch if we need clarification on anything. Chun out. The screen went dark, leaving the Council fleet hanging in space with nothing to do but wait and watch as humanity simply walked away from the greatest confrontation in galactic history. Dr. Zeleth walked through the empty streets of what had been New Shanghai just 7 days ago. Her long, thin legs carried her carefully over ground that looked like it had been scrubbed clean with industrial equipment. The Kethri scientist had studied dozens of abandoned worlds in her career, but she had never seen anything like this. Take another reading, she told her assistant, pointing her scanner at a spot where a massive residential tower had stood just 1 week earlier. The device showed nothing but bare rock and soil. Even the foundation was gone. Her assistant, a young Vorthak named Grix, held up his own scanner with a confused expression on his furry face. Doctor, the readings make no sense. There's no trace of construction materials, no chemical residue, no waste heat signatures. It's like the city was never here. Dr. Zeleth had been thinking the same thing. New Shanghai had been home to 12 million humans. The city had covered 400 square kilometers and reached 3 kilometers into the sky. Industrial complexes had surrounded it for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Spaceports had handled thousands of ships every day. Now there was nothing but empty plains under an alien sun. Show me the orbital readings again, she said. Grix activated a holographic display that showed the planet from space. The humans removed everything, Doctor. All the cities, all the farms, all the mining operations. They even took apart the orbital stations and the communication satellites. The only signs that anyone ever lived here are the roads. Dr. Zeleth looked around at the strange network of perfectly smooth pathways that connected to nothing. The humans had left the roads but taken everything else. She wondered why. "Doctor," called another voice. She turned to see Commander Cathari. "Approaching." The hegemony intelligence officer looked tired and frustrated. His normally perfect military uniform was dusty from walking through empty human settlements all day. "What did you find at the industrial sites?" Dr. Zeleth asked. "Commander." Cathari shook his head. "Gone, all of it. The fusion plants, the manufacturing centers, the storage facilities, they didn't just shut them down and leave. They took them apart piece by piece and carried everything away. Even the concrete foundations were removed." The commander activated his own display unit, showing images from dozens of worlds across human space. Every planet looked the same, empty, clean, abandoned with surgical precision. "How is this possible?" Grix asked. "Our intelligence report said the humans needed at least 6 months to evacuate even one major colony. They had 847 worlds to empty in 6 days." Dr. Zeleth had been wondering the same thing. The logistics were impossible. Moving 12 billion people and all their equipment in less than a week should have required more ships than existed in the entire galaxy. The energy costs alone should have bankrupted any civilization. "Commander, what are your deep space sensors?" "Show?" she asked. Cathari's expression grew even more troubled. "That's the strangest part, Doctor. We're detecting massive energy signatures from the direction of human core systems. Power outputs that are off our measurement scales. But when we try to get detailed scans, something interferes with our sensors." He showed her a star chart marked with energy readings. The 3 systems humans had been allowed to keep were generating more power than some entire sectors of council space. "Could they be building weapons?" Grix asked nervously. "I don't think so," Dr. Zeleth said slowly. "The energy patterns are wrong for military applications. This looks more like construction on an enormous scale." They walked toward what had been the planet's main spaceport. Like everything else, it was gone. Only the landing pads remained. Perfectly clean and empty, Dr. Zeleth knelt down and ran her scanner over the smooth surface. "Interesting," she said. "The molecular structure of these pads has been altered. Someone used advanced nanotechnology to break down the terminal buildings and hangars at the atomic level, but they left the landing surfaces intact." Commander Cathari crouched beside her. "Why would they do that?" "I think they were being polite," Dr. Zeleth said. The idea sounded crazy even as she said it, but the evidence was right in front of them. They left the infrastructure that other species might find useful, but they took everything that was specifically human. Grix made a sound of disbelief. "Doctor, you're saying they dismantled entire civilizations just to be polite?" Dr. Zeleth stood up and looked around at the empty world. "I'm saying they dismantled entire civilizations because they could. The politeness was just how they chose to do it." The 3 scientists spent the next several hours examining other sites. Everywhere they went, the story was the same. Human cities, farms, factories, and spaceports had been removed with impossible efficiency. Nothing was destroyed or damaged. Everything was simply gone. As the sun began to set, they gathered at their landing shuttle to compare notes. "Commander." Cathari activated a secure communication link to the Council fleet. "Admiral Vexcar, this is Intelligence Team 7 reporting from Kepler 442b. The Admiral's voice crackled through the speaker. "What's your status, Commander?" "Sir, the human evacuation is complete. The planet has been stripped clean of all human presence. But Admiral, I need to report something unusual." "Go ahead." Cathari looked at Dr. Zeleth, who nodded for him to continue. "Sir, the humans didn't just pack up and leave. They performed the most advanced planetary engineering operation in recorded history. 12 million people and an entire industrial civilization were removed in 6 days without leaving so much as a scrap of garbage behind." There was silence from the Admiral before he responded. "Commander, are you telling me the humans have technology we don't know about?" "Sir, I'm telling you the humans have technology that shouldn't exist." What they accomplished here would take our best engineers centuries to plan and decades to execute? They did it in less than a week. Dr. Zeleth took the communicator. Admiral. This is Dr. Zeleth. I need to add something to the commander's report. The energy readings from human core systems suggest they're constructing something massive. The power outputs are comparable to stellar engineering projects. Stellar engineering? The Admiral's voice sounded strained. Doctor, humans barely achieved interstellar travel 3 centuries ago. They don't have stellar engineering capabilities. Sir, the evidence suggests otherwise. Whatever they're building in their core systems is operating on a scale that dwarfs. Anything in Council space? Another long silence followed. When Admiral Lexkar spoke again, his voice was quieter. Pack up your equipment and return to the fleet immediately. I want full reports from all survey teams within 12 hours. The communication ended, leaving the 3 scientists alone on the empty world. Dr. Zeleth looked up at the darkening sky, where stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere among those points of light, humanity was doing something that was making the Council fleet very nervous. Doctor, Grix said quietly, what do you think they're really doing out there? Dr. Zeleth was quiet for a long moment. In her career, she had studied the rise and fall of dozens of galactic civilizations. She had seen species achieve great things and then fade away. She had watched empires that seemed invincible crumble. In just a few generations, but she had never seen anything like what humanity had just accomplished. The complete evacuation of 847 star systems in 6 days was beyond the capabilities of any known technology. The fact that they had done it voluntarily, without a fight, made it even more disturbing. I think, she said finally, that we just made a very serious mistake. And I think we're about to find out exactly how serious it was. As their shuttle lifted off from the empty world, Dr. Zeleth couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving behind more than just an abandoned planet. They were leaving behind the last moment when the galaxy made sense according to the old rules. The humans had walked away without a fight, and somehow that was the most terrifying thing any of them could imagine. Captain Cathari stood in the intelligence center of the Council flagship, staring at readings that made no sense. 6 months had passed since humanity's strange withdrawal, and the mystery had only grown deeper. The screens around him showed long-range sensor data from human space that defied everything he knew about physics and engineering. Show me the latest readings from Sector 7, he ordered his team. Lieutenant Vexra, a young officer with bright yellow skin, brought up a display. That made Cathari's stomach sink. Sir, the energy output from the human core systems has increased by another 40% since last week. We're now detecting power signatures equivalent to harnessing entire stars. Cathari rubbed his tired eyes. As the Council's chief intelligence officer, it was his job to understand what their enemies were doing. But the humans weren't acting like enemies anymore. They weren't acting like anything he could understand. Any luck penetrating their sensor jamming? He asked. No, sir, replied Sergeant Mordek, a thick-built alien from the Outer Rim. Whatever they're using to block our deep scans is beyond our technology. We can detect the energy signatures, but we can't see what's generating them. The door to the intelligence center hissed open, and Admiral Vexkar entered with Dr. Zeleth close behind. Both looked as confused and worried as Cathari felt. Captain, the Admiral said, tell me you have some answers. The Council is getting nervous about these energy readings? Cathari activated the main display, showing a map of known space. 3 small areas in former human territory glowed with symbols indicating massive energy outputs. Admiral, based on our long-range observations, I believe the humans are engaged in large-scale construction projects. But the scale is unlike anything in galactic history. Dr. Zeleth stepped closer to the display. How large-scale are we talking about, Captain? Doctor, the energy readings suggest they're manipulating matter on a planetary scale. Possibly larger. We're detecting signatures consistent with converting raw materials directly into finished products at the atomic level. Lieutenant Vexra brought up another screen showing comparative data. Sirs, if our calculations are correct, The humans are processing more raw material in a single day than most civilizations use in a century. Admiral Lexkar's 6 eyes focused on the display with growing alarm. Captain, give me your best assessment. What are they building? Cathari had been dreading this question for weeks. Admiral, I believe they're building worlds. Artificial planets, space habitats, industrial complexes that dwarf anything in Council space? The energy signatures match. Theoretical models for planetary engineering, but on a scale that shouldn't be possible. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of electronic equipment. Dr. Zeleth was the first to speak. Captain, you're suggesting that humanity has developed technology that allows them to build planets? Not just build them, Doctor. Our readings suggest they're creating entire solar systems from scratch. Converting asteroids and gas giants into habitable worlds, building structures that could house billions of people. Sergeant Mordak looked up from his console with confusion written across his broad face. Sir, if they had this kind of technology, why did they retreat? They could have fought off our entire fleet without breaking a sweat. That was the question that had been keeping Cathari awake at night. The humans had shown no fear when faced with the largest war fleet in galactic history. They had calmly agreed to withdraw from 847 star systems as if it was a minor inconvenience. At the time, everyone had assumed they were simply too weak to fight. Now it was becoming clear that the humans hadn't been weak. They had been polite. Bring up the communication logs from the evacuation. Cathari ordered. The main screen showed a recording of Admiral Jones' conversation with Admiral Lexkar 6 months earlier. Cathari had watched it dozens of times, looking for clues he might have missed. Listen to her words carefully, he said as the recording played. She doesn't argue or negotiate. She doesn't ask for more time or better terms. She simply accepts the Council's demands and asks if completing the withdrawal faster would be acceptable. Dr. Zeleth nodded slowly. She was treating it like a scheduling problem, not a military defeat. Exactly. And look at her expression. She's not afraid or angry, she's considerate, like someone who just realized they've been accidentally standing in someone else's way. Admiral Lexkar was quiet for a long moment, watching his own image on the screen as he delivered humanity's ultimatum. When the recording ended, he looked around the room with an expression Cathari had never seen before: fear. Captain R., you telling me that we threatened a species that could have destroyed us all, and they moved out of our way because they didn't want to be rude? Cathari felt his mouth go dry. Admiral, I think that's exactly what happened. Lieutenant Vexra brought up another display showing the timeline of events since the evacuation. Sirs, there's something else. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected massive objects moving in human space. Things the size of small moons, but traveling at speeds that should tear them apart. Show me, Dr. Zella said. The display showed sensor tracks of enormous objects moving between the 3 human systems. The objects appeared to be artificial structures, but they were accelerating and changing direction in ways that violated basic physics. How fast are they moving? Admiral Lexkar asked. Sir, some of these objects are traveling at significant fractions of light speed, without any visible propulsion systems. And they're not following ballistic trajectories. They're maneuvering like ships, but they're too big to be ships. Cathari studied the tracks with growing unease. They look like mobile space stations, or artificial worlds that can move between star systems. Sergeant Mordak looked up from his analysis station. Sirs, I've been running calculations on the human evacuation. The logistics of moving 12 billion people and all their equipment in 6 days would require transport capacity beyond anything in the known galaxy. What are you thinking, Sergeant? The Admiral asked, double quotes, sir, what if they didn't transport everything? What if they converted their colonies into these mobile structures and simply flew them home? The suggestion hung in the air like a physical weight. Cathari felt pieces of the puzzle clicking into place in his mind. The impossibly clean evacuations. The energy signatures that suggested matter conversion on a massive scale. The mobile objects the size of worlds. They didn't abandon their colonies, he said quietly. They packed them up and took them along. Dr. Zeleth was nodding as she worked through the implications. That would explain why the evacuations were so complete. They didn't leave anything behind because they didn't throw anything away. They converted entire civilizations into portable structures and moved them to their core systems. Admiral Vexkar walked to the main display and stared at the readings from human space. Captain, I need your professional assessment. If humanity has this level of technology, what does that mean for the balance of power in the galaxy? Cathari had been preparing for this question, but he still hated giving the answer. Admiral, if our analysis is correct, there's no balance of power anymore. Humanity could reshape the galaxy according to their wishes, and there's nothing any of us could do to stop them. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, and they chose to move out of our way instead. Lieutenant Vexra's console beeped with an incoming message. She read it quickly, then looked up with wide eyes. Sirs, we're receiving a transmission from the human core systems. It's addressed to the Galactic Council. Put it through, Admiral Vexkar ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Chun in what appeared to be the same simple uniform she had worn 6 months earlier. But behind her, Cathari could see something that made his breath catch. Through a massive window, artificial worlds hung in space like jewels, each one glowing with the light of perfect cities. Greetings, Admiral Vexkar, Admiral Chun said with the same polite tone she had used during the evacuation. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to thank the Council for encouraging us to think more carefully about our place in the galaxy. Your ultimatum helped us realize we had been thinking far too small. The transmission ended, leaving the intelligence center in stunned silence. On the screen, the energy readings from human space pulsed like a heartbeat, marking the rise of something beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Cathari realized that the war everyone had expected was indeed over before it began, but not because humanity had surrendered. It was over because there had never been a war at all. Only gods learning to be polite to ants. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from 12 species sat in their designated seats, but none of them spoke. They all watched the entrance where Admiral Sarah Chun would appear at any moment. For the first time since humanity's withdrawal 8 months ago, a human was coming to address the Council. Admiral Vexkar sat in his command chair, trying to look confident. His 6 eyes kept moving to the displays showing energy readings from human space. The numbers had continued to climb every day. Whatever the humans were building, it was getting bigger and more powerful. Admiral, whispered Commander Vexthi, the human ship is approaching the station. Vexkar nodded and activated the external cameras. What he saw made his breathing stop. The human vessel wasn't like the simple military ships they remembered. It looked like a small moon made of crystal and light. As they watched, it seemed to fold space around itself, appearing next to the Council station without any visible movement. How did it do that? Asked Counselor Morgeth of the Hegemony. Dr. Zeleth, who had been studying human technology for months, shook her head. I don't know. The energy readings suggest they're manipulating space-time itself. That should be impossible with any known physics. The main doors to the chamber opened and Admiral Chun walked in. She wore the same simple gray uniform, but something about her presence felt different. She moved with quiet confidence, like someone who knew exactly how powerful she was but chose not to show it. Behind her walked 2 other humans. One was an elderly man with white hair and kind eyes. The other was a young woman carrying what looked like a presentation device. None of them were armed. None of them looked like they were afraid of being in a room full of their former enemies. Honorable Council members, Admiral Chun said, bowing slightly, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I hope we're not interrupting anything important. The politeness in her voice was the same as always, but now it felt different to everyone in the room. 8 months ago, it had seemed like weakness. Now it felt like something much more dangerous. Counselor Vexkar stood up, trying to project authority. Admiral Chun, you requested this meeting? The Council is prepared to listen to what humanity has to say. Admiral Chun smiled slightly. We wanted to thank you personally for the ultimatum you gave us 8 months ago. It helped us realize something very important about ourselves. She gestured to the young woman who activated the presentation device. The chamber's main display came to life, showing images that made every council member lean forward in shock. The first image showed a world that looked like paradise. Cities of crystal and light covered continents of perfect green. Oceans sparkled under twin suns that hung in the sky like jewels. Billions of people moved through parks and gardens that stretched to the horizon. This is New Earth, Admiral Chun said calmly. We built it in the first month after our withdrawal. It has room for 50 billion people and produces everything they need from pure energy. The next image showed a structure that defied understanding. It looked like a ring around a star, but it was covered with forests and cities. Rivers flowed along its inner surface, and clouds drifted through an atmosphere held in place by invisible barriers. This is Haven Ring, the Admiral continued. We completed it last week. It provides living space for 200 billion people, while harvesting the entire energy output of its star. Counselor Morjuth made a sound like a gasp. Admiral, you're saying you built a ring around a star in 8 months? Actually, we built 7 of them, Admiral Chun replied casually. But Haven Ring is the largest. The presentation continued, showing images that broke the minds of every council member. Artificial worlds hanging in space like islands. Structures the size of solar systems that converted raw matter into anything their inhabitants needed. Ships that looked like flying cities, traveling between stars faster than light, should allow. Dr. Zeleth found her voice first. Admiral, this is impossible. The energy requirements alone would bankrupt any civilization. The construction time would take centuries. The elderly human stepped forward with a gentle smile. Dr. Zeleth, isn't it? I've read your papers on galactic civilizations. Very insightful work. On Dr. Marcus Webb, head of Human Technological Development. He activated a different display that showed equations and diagrams that made no sense to anyone in the room. Doctor, you're thinking in terms of traditional engineering. We don't build things anymore. We grow them. We ask matter and energy to take the shapes we need, and they comply. That's impossible, Dr. Zeleth said firmly. Matter doesn't just obey requests. Dr. Webb's smile grew wider. Doctor, everything is possible if you understand the underlying principles. We learn to speak the language that atoms understand. Once you can do that, construction becomes as simple as asking nicely. Admiral Chun took control of the presentation again. The Council's ultimatum made us realize we had been constraining ourselves unnecessarily. We thought we needed to expand, slowly to avoid alarming our neighbors. We thought we needed to use traditional technology to fit in with galactic norms. The next image showed the human evacuation from 8 months ago, but from a different perspective. Instead of desperate refugees fleeing their homes, it showed orderly groups of people walking into structures that folded space around them, entire. Cities were being carefully disassembled and converted into energy patterns, then reconstituted elsewhere. We weren't evacuating, Admiral Chun said quietly. We were relocating. Every person, every building, every garden from our colonies was carefully moved to our new worlds. Nothing was lost. Nothing was left behind except the parts we thought you might find useful. Counselor Thexkar felt his confidence crumbling. Admiral, if you had this technology 8 months ago, why did you comply with our ultimatum? You could have destroyed our entire fleet. Admiral Chun looked genuinely confused by the question. Admiral, why would we want to destroy your fleet? You asked us to move, so we moved. It seemed like the polite thing to do. The young woman activated another display, showing comparative data that made the Council's military might look pathetic. Human energy output exceeded the combined power of all Council civilizations by factors that required scientific notation to express. Besides, Admiral Chun continued, fighting would have been cruel. Like stepping on insects just because they were in your path. We prefer to find solutions that work for everyone. The chamber fell silent again. Every council member was struggling to understand what they were hearing. The humans weren't just technologically superior. They were so far beyond council civilization that they viewed military conflict as inappropriate behavior. Dr. Webb brought up another display showing the human core systems. Where once there had been 3 simple star systems, now there were hundreds of artificial worlds, each one perfect and beautiful. Structures that looked like geometric flowers bloomed in space, each one housing billions of people in comfort that surpassed anything the council species had ever imagined. We've solved the fundamental problems that limit most civilizations, he explained. Scarcity, disease, aging, death, distance, time. Our people can live as long as they choose, travel anywhere instantly, and have anything they need created from pure energy. Counselor Morgeth leaned forward with desperation in her voice. Then why are you here? What do you want from us? Admiral. Chun's expression became warm and friendly. We want to share what we've learned. The council species have been struggling with the same problems for thousands of years. We think we can help. The presentation changed to show images of council worlds but transformed. Polluted skies became clean. Overcrowded cities became gardens. Desert planets bloomed with life. Disease and poverty disappeared like bad dreams. We can fix your worlds, Admiral Chun said simply. We can eliminate scarcity from your civilizations. We can give your people lives of comfort and joy that last as long as they choose. All we ask in return is that you allow us to help. The silence that followed was complete. Every council member was staring at images of their own worlds transformed into paradise. The offer was beyond anything they had ever dreamed of. It was also clearly coming from being so powerful that refusing might not be an option. Finally, Admiral Vexkar found his voice. Admiral, what you're offering sounds wonderful. But what would be the cost to our independence? Our sovereignty? Admiral Chun looked puzzled again. Admiral, why would helping you improve your worlds affect your independence? We're not interested in ruling anyone. Governance is complicated and time-consuming. We prefer to focus on more interesting problems. Dr. Webb nodded in agreement. We're scientists and engineers, not politicians. We solve technical problems. Your species can continue governing yourselves however you choose. We just want to make sure your people don't have to suffer from easily solved problems like hunger, disease, or environmental collapse. The young woman brought up a final display showing a timeline. The transformations can begin whenever you're ready. We estimate that converting your worlds to sustainable paradise would take approximately 6 months per system. We can start with whichever worlds need help most urgently. Admiral Chun stood up, preparing to leave. We don't need an answer today. Take as much time as you need to discuss this among yourselves. Admiral Vexkar stood on the observation deck of his new home and watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that had never existed before humanity's gift. The world beneath his feet had once been a dying industrial planet, choked with pollution and stripped of resources. Today it was paradise. 3 years had passed since Admiral Chun's visit to the Council. 3 years since humanity had quietly transformed the galaxy without firing a single shot or conquering a single world. The war that everyone expected had ended with gods offering gifts to mortals. A gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers that grew in gardens where factories used to poison the air. In the distance, Vexkar could see the crystal spires of New Harmony, the city that had grown where the old capital used to struggle for survival. His own people lived there now, healthy and happy in ways their species had never known. Admiral? A familiar voice said behind him. Vexkar turned to see Dr. Zeleth approaching along the garden path. The Kethri scientist looked younger than she had 3 years ago. The humans had offered to reverse the aging process for anyone who wanted it, and most council species had accepted gratefully. Doctor, Vexkar replied, gesturing for her to join him at the observation rail. Have you finished your analysis of the latest human projects? Dr. Zeleth stood beside him and looked out at the transformed world. I have, Admiral, and I'm still struggling to understand what we're dealing with. She activated a small display device, showing images from across the galaxy. Worlds that had been barren were now covered with life. Species that had been dying from genetic diseases were now healthy and strong. Civilizations that had been trapped on failing planets now traveled between stars as easily as walking between rooms. The humans have transformed 47% of known space in 3 years, she said quietly. They've eliminated scarcity, disease, aging, and death from hundreds of species. That should be impossible, but here we are. Vexkar nodded, remembering his own transformation. The chronic pain that had plagued his species for generations was gone. His people lived longer, thought clearer, and experienced joy in ways they had never imagined. The humans had given them paradise without asking for anything in return. "What troubles you, Doctor?" he asked. Dr. Zeleth was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset. "Admiral, I've been studying galactic civilizations for my entire career. I understand how power works. Strong species conquer weak ones. Advanced civilizations dominate primitive ones. That's how the galaxy has always worked." She turned to face him with confusion in her ancient eyes. "But the humans don't conquer anyone. They don't demand tribute or obedience. They don't even want our gratitude. They just help, and I don't understand why." In the distance, a group of human children was playing with youngsters from a dozen different species. They laughed together as they chased balls of light that danced through the air like living rainbows. The humans had taught them games that bent the laws of physics, turning play into magic. "Perhaps," Vexkar said slowly, "that's exactly why. They can do what they do. They don't think like conquerors because they don't need to conquer anyone." A new voice joined the conversation. "That's a very insightful observation, Admiral." They turned to see Admiral Chun walking up the path, accompanied by Dr. Webb and several other humans. Admiral Chun looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago, wearing the same simple uniform and carrying herself with the same quiet confidence. "Admiral Chun," Vexkar said, bowing slightly. Even after 3 years of receiving humanity's gifts, he still felt awkward around beings who could reshape reality with their thoughts. "We weren't expecting you. I hope you don't mind the surprise." "Visit," Admiral Chun replied with her characteristic politeness. "We wanted to check on how the planetary restoration was progressing. Are you satisfied with the results?" Dr. Zeleth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Admiral, you've turned our dying world into paradise. Our people are healthier and happier than they've ever been in recorded history." "Satisfied seems like an inadequate word," Dr. Webb smiled warmly. "We're glad to hear that, Doctor. We've been working on some new projects that might interest you." "Would you like to see what we've been building lately?" The human scientist activated a holographic display that showed images from the edge of known space. Where once there had been empty void, now there were structures that defied imagination. Rings of light connected distant galaxies. Bridges of crystallized space-time allowed instant travel across impossible distances. "We've been connecting our galaxy to neighboring galaxies," Dr. Webb explained casually. "There are so many interesting civilizations out there that could benefit from what we've learned. We thought it was time to expand our perspective a bit." Admiral Vexkar felt his 6 eyes widen in shock. "You're connecting entire galaxies?" Just to the nearby ones for now," Admiral Chun said, as if discussing a minor construction project. "We don't want to move too fast and alarm anyone. We've learned to be careful about that." Dr. Zeleth activated her own scanner and pointed it at the humans. The readings made no sense, just as they never had. "Admiral, my instruments still can't understand what you are. Energy patterns that shouldn't exist, matter states that defy. Physics, consciousness that extends beyond normal space-time. What are you?" Admiral Chun looked genuinely thoughtful about the question. "Dr. Zelith, I think we're what happens when a species decides that the old limits don't have to apply anymore. We asked ourselves why things had to be difficult, and we discovered that most limitations are just habits of thinking." One of the other humans, a young woman with silver hair, stepped forward. Doctor, your species and all the council races have incredible potential. You just haven't learned to use it yet. The scarcity and struggle you've experienced for thousands of years aren't natural laws. They're just problems that can be solved. But how? Dr. Zelef asked with frustration in her voice. How did you learn to break the laws of physics? How did you develop technology that lets you reshape matter with your thoughts? Dr. Webb chuckled softly. Doctor, we didn't break any laws. We just learned to read the fine print. Reality is much more flexible than most people realize. Once you understand the underlying code, you can rewrite it. Admiral Vexkar watched the conversation with growing understanding. You're saying that any species could learn to do what you do? With enough time and the right approach, yes, Admiral Chun confirmed. That's actually why we're here. We wanted to ask if any of your species would be interested in learning. We could teach you to reshape matter, travel instantly between stars, create worlds from pure energy, all the things we do. The offer hung in the air like a physical presence. Vexkar realized that humanity was offering to elevate the council species to their own level of existence, to transform them from mortals into gods, but not all of the council species were adapting well to humanity's gifts. Some had thrived in the new age of abundance, but others struggled with a reality where their old values and traditions no longer made sense. Species that had built their entire cultures around scarcity and conflict found themselves lost in a universe where neither existed anymore. What about the species that don't want to change? Dr. Zelef asked. The ones who prefer the old ways? Admiral. Joan's expression became gentle and understanding. They can continue living however makes them happy, Doctor. We're not trying to force anyone to become like us. We just want to make sure that struggle and suffering are choices, not necessities. If summoned by the conversation, a group of hegemony officials approached along another path. Their leader, Counselor Morgeth, looked troubled and out of place in the paradise humanity had created. Admiral Chung, Morgeth said with stiff formality, I need to speak with you about my people. Of course, Counselor, Admiral Chun replied. Politely, what can we help you with? Morgeth gestured at the transformed world around them. This is wonderful, Admiral. But my species doesn't know how to live in paradise? We've spent 10,000 years fighting for survival. Competition and struggle are central to our identity. Without them, we feel ... Admiral Chun nodded with understanding. Counselor, would it help if we created challenges for your people? Not deadly ones, but complex problems that would let them exercise their competitive instincts without risking harm. You would do that? Morgeth asked with surprise. Of course. The goal isn't to make everyone the same, Counselor. It's to make sure everyone can be happy in their own way. Dr. Webb was already activating his display, showing designs for worlds, where the hegemony species could engage in complex competitions and challenges. Each scenario was perfectly safe but required all the strategic thinking and competitive drive their culture valued. As the sun finished setting, Admiral Vexkar realized he was witnessing the moment when the galaxy truly changed forever. Not through conquest or destruction, but through the simple act of powerful beings choosing to be kind. The humans had walked away from a fight 3 years ago, and in doing so they had won something far greater than any military victory. They had won the right to reshape the galaxy according to their vision of what it could become. Looking up at the stars, Vexkar could see the lights of human constructions scattered across the sky like jewels. Each one represented